Entrepreneur, e-commerce expert, and sneaker kingpin, John McPheters helped bring the consignment model to footwear, and then leveled up by launching his own store, Stadium Goods. This is his blueprint. You grew up in New York City. How did that inform your sort of attitude towards entrepreneurialism?
I was like that classic New York kid, you know? I was really into hip hop and sneakers and graffiti in the mid-90s. All that together kind of shaped a lot of where I went directionally. You can't survive in New York with just one hustle. So I always was going after new income streams and new revenue sources since I was little.
Leaving high school, going to college, did you have much of a sense of professional purpose?
I went to school for advertising. You know, I always worked hard and tried to get interesting jobs and internships, but I had no idea where I was going.
What are the first jobs that you get out of school?
I didn't have a gig lined up. I was out of school. I just kind of was looking for a fresh start. So I decided I was going to move to Japan and try it out. It was the perfect time. I didn't have any responsibilities. There was nothing that I had to live up to at the time. So I got a job at Def Jam Japan.
How did you make that connection?
I literally just walked up into the Def Jam office and acted like I was supposed to be there. Walked right past security, up the elevator, into the office. And by the time I'm like center mass in the middle of the office, there's people there that I kind of made my pitch to. A month and a half later, one of the guys that I spoke to was leaving and he needed someone that could speak English to be on the team, so he slotted me in. There was a lot about it that was really sexy to me from a cultural standpoint. You know, like they had US hip hop artists that were going out there and they had all these Japanese artists that they were developing. It was very much an intersection of a bunch of different cultures kind of happening at once. It was at this time when streetwear in Tokyo was just booming. The height of the Bathing Ape moment when Nigo was killing it. You know, I got to meet him and kind of see that as like, wow, these guys are doing it. Like they've made something really special, such an iconic brand. To see the lines around the block for kids waiting for product, just every single thing selling out in a heartbeat. That was really what lit my fire in a lot of ways to go after something bigger.
What brought you back to the States?
It's very difficult to see that to the end somewhere because you're not in your, it's like no home court advantage, you know? Everything is a fight and a learning and trying to figure something out. You have a much better shot at succeeding where you're from and where your relationships are from.
You start working at a handful of different companies, including Flight Club, Team Epiphany with Coltrane, and a couple other things.
Yep.
How do you get your sort of fingers into each one of these businesses?
Flight Club was more relationship driven. I knew a lot of the guys that were over there and was kind of in the mix from the inception in some way, shape, or form. With Team Epiphany, I got lucky. A good friend of mine took me over there and let me make the pitch, and they gave me the project to run for that first one. Very quickly, I took to it and had a bunch more projects after that and ended up just kind of growing with them as they grew.
You are sort of cobbling together a very piecemeal existence. What gave you the confidence to feel like this was all gonna work out at the end of the month?
Well, I personally take no solace in a 9 to 5. In my mind, I have to be steering my own destiny. I was always trying to find a million things to work on until I got to a place where I felt comfortable.
At Flight Club, tell me about what you took on from a responsibility standpoint.
I kind of left the Team Epiphany thing at one point and decided to go wholeheartedly in that direction. I felt like I could be a real asset in terms of growing the business, whether it was seizing opportunities that weren't being seized or just driving and hammering behind the business to try to grow it faster.
At what point do you decide, this is great and I love Flight Club and what we've been doing here, but I need to do it for myself?
I was very lucky in that my current partner, Jed Stiller, and we were involved in a project that was called Swarm Mobile, sold to Groupon. It provided us that opportunity to have a little extra money in our pockets, made me feel secure enough with a child on the way that I could go off and really try to figure out what that next project was going to be. You sort of have these pivotal moments in life where you realize that you need to change directions, and I saw myself starting a family. I saw kind of what that next round of life was going to be, and I didn't feel like I had the control that I wanted to have in life. At the time when I made that move, Stadium Goods wasn't an idea. You know, it was, what are we going to do? I knew that Jed was going to be the right partner for me on a bunch of levels, and yeah, we just decided that we were going to hunker down and figure out what that next play was. Once you have the family and the kids and everything's lined up, it's a lot harder to make a jump like that. It was all kind of happening in tandem, but the time was really then for me to go out and do my own thing.
After cutting his teeth in other people's operations, McPheters was ready to go out on his own. He just needed the right idea. What is day one, step one? You and Jed are sitting in a room. What is literally the first thing that one does?
A lot of brainstorming around a deck. Kind of like distilling it down to an idea. We had some strong minds that were kind of like around us at the time that we would throw things off to get feedback. Like yu-ming as an example.
Okay.
Like he was always very helpful when we were going through this process. A lot of other people in the sneaker space.
So you have to do a raise to open the store, open the e-com.
Yep.
How does that work?
Jed, he's my main partner, but he handles all of that type of stuff, thankfully, and I'm glad he does because he's a lot better at that type of stuff than me, whether it's selling it into investors, pitching the financials of the business, kind of how the operating capital is going to work, that type of stuff. So he was able to bring in that money when it was just a presentation and a deck. I've always played a decisive role in like steering what that business vision is. I think a big part of why we're doing so well is that you can't do everything. You need to have kind of like your yin to your yang, and he's provided that.
You're getting ready to launch Stadium Goods. What is the rationale that you are deciding to launch a brick and mortar store?
There's a bunch of reasons why we needed a brick and mortar. One was to host intake and have a place that people could bring stuff and drop it off. Two was create this picture of what our brand was. I mean, a lot of that is the walls and the lights and the neon, things that you can only really present through brick and mortar. In this day and age, there's so many people trying to do the next tech thing, but for us, we wanted something that people could connect with and see and understand who we were.
When you were looking at this space, what were the most important things, aesthetically that you wanted to establish the brand of Stadium Goods?
The high ceilings, I think, were pretty important. We also needed a space that we could white box, where we could make it look really, really clean. This was all brown brick before we painted it. Good train access, tons of trains right here on Canal. We needed something we could really craft a nice presentation for.
From day one that you open the doors and you open the website, what's the runway look like based on that first raise?
It was $1 million on the first round, which might sound like a lot, but when you're looking at brick and mortar in Soho, the build out, the website, and it's getting the staff and the product together, it's...
How many employees are you talking about?
When we started, it was probably about 30, I'd say. Chad and I kind of like cutting hair in our own barbershop, getting a lot of that work done. Really small team.
Is it just off to the races from day one?
We thought it was going to be off to the races from day one. It was definitely not. You open the doors, you kind of wait for people to come in and shop, and it wasn't quite what we expected. We were always going really hard on the website and knew that that was where a bulk of the business was going to come from, but we expected more from the store in the beginning. And it was sort of like an awakening, like, wow, we've kind of got to go about this a different way. What that meant to us was that we needed to really double down and think about how we were going to do things differently. We really dug in and got a lot heavier with the content. We also started looking at new ways to build our name locally, promote our name locally, just get more people in the door.
How does one put together the initial inventory for a consignment store that has not yet existed?
It's a big challenge. And I mean, when we opened, we probably had 2,000 styles on the wall, which might sound like a lot, but it wasn't. A lot of that was relationships and getting people to trust us enough to give us that product early when you don't really know when you're going to be open to sell, because you have to have it ahead of time. We were very happily surprised at how quickly the actual intake picked up. Like in that same instance when we're trying to figure out how we get more traffic into the store, there was a line out the door on the consignment side. People are just bringing product left and right. I think that was part of our growth process, was understanding that there was a good amount of product out there, and that if we treated people right, we could get access to more. While we still focus on that to this day, a lot more of it is community-based. People just bringing stuff to us that they want to sell.
What are just the most expensive sneakers that you have?
I think right now it is an M&M Jordan 4, 23,000 on the sticker.
In terms of volume, the White Yeezy is number one?
This is our new highest volume in terms of dollars sold on a shoe.
So at the top of this year, you raised about $5 million and you added on Mark Cuban, among other people, as an advisor. What was the auspice that pushed you to want to do that second round of raise?
To grow a business, once you kind of have the nuts and bolts of it down, you You need capital if you really want to make a big name. We realized that we were very short from a headcount standpoint, and we knew we needed more money if we really wanted to scale. I think a lot of people saw what that opportunity was from the standpoint of disrupting retail and seeing it as this bigger vision that we were presenting, and that helped us get money in the door.
You're on track to do slightly over 100 million this year.
115.
115. What do you think the ceiling is for this business?
I mean, I don't, honestly. I think things go right. It could be 300, 400, 500 million next year. It could get to $1 billion.
What are the dominoes that have to fall to get you to $1 billion?
There's always going to be people that buy sneakers. There's always going to be brands that make product. There's always going to be inefficiencies in the market to exploit. I don't think we've really realized anything close to what our potential is overseas. So we just want to focus in on that and continue driving down that road. As long as we stay lean and we move quick, then I don't think there's an end to it.
John's early work experience in Asia would come in handy as he set his sights on the strategic expansion of Stadium Goods. So we're in the basement of Stadium Goods. Is this all of your inventory?
No, this is actually a pretty small part of the inventory. We have our own off-site warehouse where the bulk of it is.
If you had to ballpark it, how many pairs of shoes do you have in your possession on any given Tuesday?
I would guess we're creeping up on about 100,000 pairs.
So that's a lot of individual items to keep track of.
Yeah, it is.
You talk about the international component of the business. I know after about a year, you guys got in touch with Alibaba and Jack Ma and those guys in China, who are basically the Amazon of China.
Yeah.
How did they reach out, and what is the nature of that relationship?
So we reached out to them. You see something you want, you try to go after it, and it took a lot of persistence to getting in the door and getting some of those relationships going. So I think they saw a couple scrappy guys that were really making it happen and making some big strides. They thought that we could fit in there and gave us access and let us get in there and do our thing.
Is the taste palette in China comparable to the taste palette in America? Like, do they want the same products?
Kids all around the world want the same thing. If someone posts a photo of a celebrity wearing a shoe, that's what they're gonna want everywhere.
What is your ultimate goal for the business?
It's really hard to know at this point. I think we're still very much the horse with the blinders on, just trying to get through and maintain the direction and the trajectory and do right by our customers and our sellers. In this day and age, there are a lot of those outcomes that could take place. You could get acquired, you could IPO, you could create some kind of long-lasting partnership. I don't think we necessarily know what direction we would go. We're trying to stay true to who we are and keep rocking.
As a man in his late 30s with a child and a wife, I have to ask, I know that you're still working 10, 12, 14-hour days. How much longer can you do that?
I've been able to get the Sundays back, and the Saturdays are creeping up. It's still a very feverish pace. A lot of it comes down to time management and being able to spend the time that I would like to with Max and Minya, and making sure that we can still be that family. I do the mornings, like 7 days a week. I'm the wake-up guy, the breakfast guy. No matter what's going on, I still try to get home. It's a balance. It's really stressful. I don't know how many more years it can kind of go at that pace.
You had hands in lots of different pots. So you've had to centralize all of your energies and activities into one business. 2 years in, how do you feel about that pretty significant change in lifestyle? I
feel great, I feel proud and happy in a lot of ways. I also feel scared and there's a lot of anxiety. Part of having all those hustles early on, it's what kept me comfortable taking risks on things that I was interested in. I think part of getting to where I was comfortable taking this leap of faith and this risk was making sure that I had the stomach for it, making sure that I had some resources to fall back on, that I had a good amount of time to figure it out if things didn't go our way. It's been a great road. We've come a really long way in a very short period of time. Great people, very excited to be here and happy for how it's gone.